There have been a lot of talks in the guitar and guitar pedal communities over recent releases of amp modelers, simulators, and profilers. At the end of the day, what do we want? What do I need? How do I choose? And can we even tell the difference? Let's talk about it. Now, I hope this finds a lot of you well, and a lot of guitar players are going to be so divided in this conversation over what is better. We can kind of touch on that for just a second, but I think we need to kind of get that out of our minds of what is better, a real tube amplifier or a simulator of something like a tube amplifier. So let's go ahead and just hop into this subject of better. It's so difficult to say something is better than something else because there's so many different criterias that make something quote unquote better. I would really like to take a look at what we actually need when it comes to guitar tone. There's a long list of companies that have stepped up in recent years or emerged completely just around the effect of a guitar amp simulator, modeler, or a profiler. Companies like Kemper back there. Companies like Neural DSP, companies like Universal Audio, other companies that are jumping in like Boss and TC Electronic, Strymon and the Iridium. We can't forget about Walrus and the ACS1. Then there's also honorable mention for Fractal's Axe Effects and IK's Tone X. The point is that there are so many to choose from, and those are just the profilers. There's a whole world of amplifiers out there, whether they be tube or solid state, that serve as the base for all of these simulators, modelers, and profilers. For me personally, I use both. I think they have a lot to do with workflow and different places that they can be more useful. Sometimes you just need the real deal. Sometimes you want the real amp in the room experience, whether that be for your own pleasure of feeling tone in the room hit you with sound waves, or whether it's just a really specific tone that is just really easily dialed in on a real tube amp, like this JCM 800 back here. Sometimes it's an issue of versatility and needing something that can do a lot of things. When I first picked up my Kemper Profiler, it changed the game because I had so many things at my fingertips, ready to go. It didn't matter if I was working on anything from blues to metal. I had everything that I needed right there in that box, including effects. The Profiler fit right into the rack of my studio desk, and everything was ready to go. For all of the gigging musicians out there, some of these options aren't always the most friendly when it comes to form factor. That amp back there probably weighs at least 30 pounds, and that's just the head. Then I have to have a speaker cabinet, which also weighs a ton and probably has to be rolled around, stored. It could break, things need to be serviced. Real amps can really come with a lot of upkeep. Enter in the pedal-based amplifier. This is the Ruby from Universal Audio, and it's been on my board for years now. This one is based off of an AC30, actually 3 different AC30s. It served as a somewhat simplified option that is consistent, always sounds good, and I can customize it to my heart's content. And most importantly, it feels and works like the real deal. But that's the thing, it isn't, it's just a pedal. It fits on a pedal board, and sometimes this can be a touring musician's best friend. I've heard recent rumor that even the Edge from U2 has replaced his thousands of dollars of racks and amps with one of these, which is absolutely insane to think about. Now, I don't know the Edge and what he's doing personally, but when something like this can be used on such huge stages under the feet of such incredible musicians, wow, it's just crazy to think about what you can get from a small box. These things come in a variety of styles, sizes, and as far as sound quality goes, varying degrees of quality. So how do I choose? Do I shoot for something pedal-based just because pedals are cool? Is it really as good as the real thing? Do I need the real thing? Should I make a heavier investment into something like the Quad Cortex, a Kemper, or even something from the Helix line? I really believe this whole process of finding an amplifier, whether it be an actual real deal amp or a profiler that's going to sit on a pedal board, picking one of these out is really similar to what it would be like picking out a guitar. You don't buy a Les Paul just because it's a Les Paul. You don't buy a Strat because it's a Strat. I mean, I think if you ever played something like that and it really resonated with you, that's the reason you would get it. We've all done it. We've all jumped on Sweetwater or YouTube just to see breakdown videos of different instruments and how they look and sound. And it's so hard because sometimes we can just make things sound good for the sake of selling an item. This isn't saying that any of those videos were lying to you or that they weren't showing awesome instruments or awesome gear. At risk of sounding corny, I think the real thing you need to consider is, does this resonate with you? Then practically speaking, is this going to fix the problem that you have? Do you even have an amp solution? Are you trying to move away from your amps because they're too heavy or they're collectible? And guys, there's no shame in the game. Sometimes we just want bragging rights for sick gear. So here's a couple questions I would ask yourself. What are you needing? What do I want? Do I need something that's going to have versatility? Do I need the authentic real thing? Do I need something smaller that's going to be in a better form factor? Or do I just want something really, really cool? Be careful looking for answers on the internet because there are going to be so many different opinions that might be really true for them, but aren't going to be the same for you. Chances are, if you're in the place thinking about an amplifier, a new pedal, or maybe even getting into the pedal simulator profiler modeler game for the very first time, you probably have some other pedals and some other guitars, and you need to consider them. When it comes to guitar tone, one of my favorite things is overdrive and distortion. But these pedals are going to sound so different on different amps and on different amp pedals. Now, hear me when I say that. This pedal is not going to sound like a completely different pedal just because you're playing it through a different amp. The circuits inside of pedals are going to be used to simulate this overdrive section that happens inside of either specific amps or just specific circuits. Depending on how your amp or your amp pedal is set, you could just be using those to drive it even harder. You really have to consider all of these things that are involved. It's a guitar going into a pedal, maybe going into an amp pedal, or maybe just an amp. Are you going for a nice clean tone through your amplifier, or are you leaning onto the side of edge of breakup? Are you reaching for a tube screamer sort of circuit, or maybe a blues breaker sort of circuit? There's this element of nerding out when it comes to guitar tone. Everything matters. Sometimes it matters too much. Some people are so concerned about the specific chipset inside of an old vintage pedal that they have, when in reality, when it comes to getting a good guitar tone, if we closed our eyes and we just listened, all we would know is good or bad. Whether it's good or bad is completely up to us and our preferences. When we're comparing the real deal or a pedal, the question is, can you hear the real deal? Are your ears good enough to discern the magical molecules that are flying through the air and hitting your ear canals to produce this magical sound? Time after time, I've found that it doesn't matter. I bet each of us have so many different records we're thinking of right now when we're thinking about amazing, legendary, good, buzzword guitar tone. And we spend so much time and money trying to chase after those things so we can feel like our guitar heroes. That's all well and good, but can we actually say why their guitar tone is good? There's an element of feeling. When we listen to it, it just makes us feel good. I think about what it's like to stand in front of this amp back here with it just cranked in the room, not even thinking about where the EQ knobs are at, and then just hitting a chord. It is absolutely magical. That's because it gave me a feeling. But I promise if I plug that amp pedal into a big enough speaker and hit the chord that I did before, it would deliver those same sort of feelings. I want to remind everybody that this is more about being a musician than it is a gear snob. There are tons of brands out there that just make amazing products, and it's worth playing and trying to see if it's going to resonate with you. Sometimes it's not always the best idea to buy cheap, but it's not always the best thing to buy the most expensive. Ultimately, you have to answer that question of what's in your budget and what do you like? I want to give you some homework that I think is really going to help you out. If you haven't already, do some digging in guitar history to find out what these amps actually sound like and why they're famous. Make a list of some of your favorite musicians and do a deep dive and see what kind of rigs that they use. Next, try to find the value of some of these pieces of gear so that maybe stuff doesn't go underutilized and you don't go overpaying. Lastly, find some time to go to a local music store and check out their options. I promise you they're going to have amps and pedals ready to go. There's some food for thought. I hope this answered some questions for you and has challenged you to think about your guitar rig and your tone a little differently. And as you are looking at different options, I hope you consider the whole spectrum of your entirety of your rig so that you can have great tone too. Guitar amp, guitar pedal, who cares? They're all sweet. So get out there and make some music. If you're looking for a place to maybe do a record or cut a single or even just try some ideas and songwrite, check out the Echo Studio here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'll leave some links below so it's easy to reach us, and I'll add links to the gear that you saw in today's video. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one.